So as I sit down to put this episode together, it is Tuesday, February 24th, 2026. I say that date because depending on when you find this episode, the contents found within may be completely irrelevant and 100% behind the times. But as we sit together today, Apple just recently announced, it was a little over a week ago, that they are entering into the world of video with their platform. We've seen Spotify do it. We've seen the impact that YouTube has had on podcasting over the past couple of years. It was only a matter of time before Apple dove into the pool and played as well. They're taking it to a new level, reportedly, with what they're going to do. And today I want to talk a little bit about what that means, but on a grander scale, what it means for you as a podcaster and implementing podcast strategy into your business. Hello, my name is Jason Sircone, and you have discovered Podcasting Strategy Simplified. So this news from Apple has got everybody talking. So I would be remiss to not take a few minutes to talk to you about what I feel this means for the podcasting space and ultimately for you and how you utilize podcasting in your business. So I will throw this disclaimer at you right now. If you've arrived at this podcast expecting some kind of technical breakdown of all of this new fangled technology and innovation that Apple is bringing to life, you've come to the wrong podcast. That is just not my jam. Even in having some conversations with people, I realized that I was out of my depth when it comes to the technological side of this. But I will use my platform to share some of the resources that I've connected with and learned from just in my own gathering of information on this news. So let's start with what Apple is doing a little bit differently. Now, as I said, Spotify, YouTube, there's a number of video elements that have come into this. And then if you want to factor in all the other social media platforms that have been hotbeds for podcast discovery, your TikToks, your Instagrams, your Facebooks, just places that you probably are sharing clips or utilizing to talk about your podcast. That's all part of the game as well. But what Apple is doing is they're bringing a new technology, and as I learned today, not exactly new, something they've had, and it took a little bit of memory jogging to remember this, but the big three letters that you may or may not have heard before I say them right now is HLS. I had no idea what HLS meant, so I had to do a quick search and discover that HLS was HTTP live streaming. What this means is your typical podcast file, and this is probably going to be the height of the technology side of this podcast for you today. HLS, when you think of a podcast, it's delivered in one big file download. With HLS, it actually segments it into tiny bits and delivers it segment by segment. What this means, to give you the layman's terms here, is that you would have the ability as a consumer to use Apple Podcasts to switch back and forth from audio to video and from video to audio seamlessly. Meaning if you were watching a video podcast and you got to around the 12-minute mark, but then you had to go because you had to leave for work, when you get in the car, you could switch to the audio and pick up right where you left off. That is pretty cool. And it took a conversation with the great Rob Greenlee to remind me that this is a technology that Apple has utilized in the past. And he reminded me that I had this on my old iPod way back in the day before I even knew what podcasts were. You could consume video podcasts in that way, but there was also other videos and other media that you could consume through your iPod that use this technology. So I'm assuming as we've developed over years and years and years, it's going to be even better and more in tune. But the thing to remember as we sit and talk today, this is all just news. This is all just words and videos in the ether. This has not rolled out yet. Apple has not introduced this yet. On top of that, once they do, they're only working with a select few podcast hosts that can support this technology. And these are the hosts that right now are producing massively big files or big video podcasts. Is that you? I don't know. It could be, right? But overall, the way I look at this is as a consumer of podcasts, I think it's pretty cool that this is going to be an option. But it was funny because when I was talking with Rob today, I had a little of my own element of old school / old man yelling at cloud when I started thinking about the ability to switch back and forth from audio to video and video to audio. I just said, what the hell do I need that for? Is that really necessary? And again, that was just some of my old school creeping out, but it is cool that that's the feature that will be in place. And it really is how a lot of folks today are consuming media. So I'll tell you that this news was very, very interesting to me. When I first heard it, I don't want to say I dismissed it, but I did say, oh, cool, Apple's bringing video in. It was almost my same reaction to Spotify bringing in video. Maybe I haven't taken it as seriously as I should, but I've never disqualified video and I've never discounted video. In fact, it's not even an option when I work with people. I'm going to get to that more later. But I think it was more or less not so much getting sucked into the nuance of this shiny new object that was out there, but that was just me. I think, again, it bears repeating from my end of things that this is something that is pretty cool, but it's probably not going to be something that's accessible to you and me. Depending on what level you're playing on, this is going to be something that's going to be so far out of reach that more than likely we're not going to get an opportunity to be a part of it. If we do, and say you do choose to go down that path, if it becomes presentable, well, it's going to cost you. It's not going to be cheap. And you may lose some of the freedom of delivering your podcast to a wide open market through a number of different platforms through an RSS feed. Will that happen? I don't know. Again, this is just a lot of speculation, but I feel that this is going to be one of those things that caters more to those massively large video podcasts, maybe some of the podcasts that you're already seeing on Netflix. And that's just another, I mean, that's a topic for another day. My big thing, again, is podcasting strategy. And what I wanted to take a few minutes today to talk about was how this news impacts your podcasting strategy going forward. Newsflash, it does not. It doesn't impact your strategy at all. Down the road, when this becomes more of a thing, when it's actually out, right now, again, it just seems like it's a huge topic for conversation and a lot of what ifs and, oh boy, if this happens, this will be cool. But for your overall strategy, you've got to be thinking about what you can control. This is not anything that you can control. But can you control making a podcast that features audio and video? Absolutely, you can. What you do with it is totally up to you. This is an expectation that I set when I work with my clients. I don't say you should go one way or the other. I say you should do both, but where we put our emphasis really depends on your goals. Now, working with brands and companies of different sizes, typically the goals center around marketing. What can we do to leverage this podcast to position our brand, our company, our leaders as the resources that people need to understand, need to connect with, and ultimately patronize, therefore utilizing our company to solve their problems. That usually requires marketing materials that are beyond the audio platform. So we're looking at video clips. We're looking at long form videos. We're looking at videos that we can transcribe and utilize as blogs so we can focus on SEO and discoverability. There's a number of things that are in place. So when it comes to the overall strategy, it's not so much the technology or the delivery, it's how you're utilizing the content. And I will say that, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, I feel like this is going to be one of those things where the big guys get to be a part of this first. And will Apple's new technology trickle down to us independent podcasters or those that are using podcasts for business? Maybe. I don't know the answer to that. But I will say that you can still leverage video in a powerful way, and you don't have to worry about what that platform is doing. So this is the big message for today. Focus on getting really good at the media that you're creating. Utilize the tools that are at your disposal right now. Here I am. I record my podcasts on StreamYard. This gives me the ability to capture audio and video at the same time. I then separate the files. I have local files saved. I can download the video as an MP4 and the audio as an MP3. I will edit both. I will put the MP3 out through an RSS feed as an audio podcast, and then I'll have the video that will go live on YouTube. That's my method of getting my podcast out into the world. I then take that video and embed it in a blog post, and I have it on jasonsircone.com for each episode. You could choose to do something completely different. You could choose to not have the full video live. You can just make clips of your video. You could have 5 to 10 minute clips. You can have reels or shorts or TikTok length videos. I recommend putting the whole video out there because what we're learning, and I don't have the exact statistics, but this was just something else I came across as I was doing all this other research. People are getting the ball rolling with their podcast discovery through YouTube, through the video element. As they get accustomed to a podcast, they're then subscribing and listening through the audio platform of their choice, which could be Apple, Spotify, iHeart, Amazon, any of the great platforms that are out there. There's dozens to choose from. But the importance of that first-hand discovery really says a lot. And the fact that many, many people are leaning into video first tells the story of why you should not be ignoring it. Now, how much this changes with what Apple is doing, I don't know. Again, don't want to speculate, don't want to spend our time doing that today. But what I want you to understand, if you take anything away from this conversation today, focus on what you can control. And what you can control is getting really, really good at what you're doing. You see, a lot of times that shiny object comes along and we want it. We want to grab it with both hands. And we want to hope that it's going to be the silver bullet that changes everything for what we're doing. But in reality, what's really going to change where we are and where we want to get to is how good we get at navigating the path. That comes through practice. That comes through repetition. That comes through having conversation after conversation after conversation. That comes from turning on the microphone and going solo and having these one-on-one conversations like I'm doing with you right now. You've got to put in the reps. And it doesn't matter how big and great and grand and newfangled the technology gets. You have to be really good at what you're doing or else no one's going to give a damn. You could deliver a podcast to somebody's door with a bouquet of roses attached to it. If your podcast doesn't drill home the message for your target listener, they're not going to want to consume your podcast. Therefore, it's not going to serve your purpose. You have to get really good at what you're doing, and this is the time to do it. The podcast medium as a whole has a lot of gray area right now. We don't know where things are going. This video conversation is not one that's going away. We've talked about it here on this show before. There are a lot of people out there that are resisting it, but even the resistors are coming around, realizing the importance of video to the podcast platform. Where it goes, I don't know. One more time, not going to speculate. But there's a lot of good that you can do with the video content today that could potentially serve that greater purpose down the road. Who knows? Maybe Apple opens it up to all of us, and we all get an opportunity to play in that sandbox. That would be pretty cool, but that just doesn't seem to be the way that things are trending. I think the best way to move forward for us is keeping that strategy front of mind. That's what I'm always going to talk about. Your strategy should be first. It's really the motto of Bombtrack Media, strategy first. But understanding how this video can play a role in what you're doing now, as well as your audio. And I think to encapsulate both of those, your message, what you have to say, what you want your audience to take away from your podcast. There is no form of technology that's going to take that away as long as you are attracting the right people and giving them the value that they seek. That's the name of the game. Audio, video, social media, podcast platform, website, blog, email, smoke signal. That one would be cool. If you pull that one off, let me know. But those those aren't even all. Those are just some of the mediums available to you. If you utilize these mediums effectively, you're going to start to develop an audience. Perhaps you grow to a point where you would get that big show opportunity. Maybe Netflix does come calling, but that's probably out of bounds because for the most part, I don't know if this is you or not, but I can speak for myself. I know my show is never going to be that mainstream. Talking about podcasting, it's a pretty niche lane to be a part of. But I'm thrilled with the people that show up, especially you. You're here with me today. You're listening. You're watching this content. You're getting something from it. Hopefully, it's helping you move the needle just a little bit in the right direction. That's what I look for. That's what lights me up. That's what keeps me coming back to produce more content. That's what podcasting means to me. And the fact that I can take this content and utilize it in multiple ways, I love the multifacetedness of podcast content. I've said that for a long time. It was really one of the foundations that helped me build Bombtrack Media. The fact that content repurposing is everything that a business should be leaning into because they have a lot of boxes to check and they have a lot of masters to serve. And the podcast content can help do that. I'm sure you're experiencing that to some degree as well. But leveraging the content that you have in front of you starts with understanding your messaging, understanding what you want to do from a podcasting perspective. And then as you produce that content and put it out to the world, as technologies come along, you can find ways to adapt. And if you get that opportunity to play in the sandbox with the big guys, then great. But if you don't, that's okay, because you're going to attract the right people. And the right people are the ones that are going to support you and ultimately help patronize your business so you can grow. You grow the brand, grow the podcast, scale in any way that you see fit. So the moral of the story, yes, Apple has brought a revolutionary new video platform to life. At least that looks like that's what they're going to be doing, as the news states. But we've got a lot of time before we see A, what that is, B, how it works, and C, if we get to play in that sandbox with a lot of the people and a lot of the companies that have the money to do so right out of the gates. I'm not going to let it affect me, and I don't think you should either. If you put your emphasis on your podcast strategy, you're going to go far, and you're going to be able to use your podcast for the right reasons. We'll see what we can add to it down the road, but for now, just keep focusing on what you're doing and just keep focusing on getting really good at it. So I mentioned, as I wrap up here, I came across several resources. I want to thank Rob Greenlee for the conversation. That was part of the conversation that I wasn't expecting. We just went into a lot of the technology side of this announcement, and he really opened my eyes. I just realized, wow, this guy knows his shit, and I'm a little lower on the totem pole in regards to that knowledge. And I knew that going in, but he really gave me some insight that was incredibly valuable. So I want to thank Rob for that. One of the big pieces of news, and I'll say it was probably the best, easy to digest explanation of all of this, was from the great Elsie Escobar. And I'm going to tag her account. She posted a video on Instagram that broke down what we are dealing with in regards to this announcement from Apple. I'm going to share her Instagram account. If you go to the show notes, you can click on that and look for what her video. It's her most recent release, at least as I come to you today. And I don't know if you can actually tag an Instagram video. I'll tell you what, if you can, it will be in the show notes. But I don't know if you can tag an exact video. We're going to find that out together. But if I don't have a tag directly to that video on Instagram, I will tag Elsie's account, and you can check out that video as well. As I said, very quick and detailed explanation. I want to thank her for that. And I'd like to thank all the people that are talking about this, because it's just it's the podcast world we live in. We love to talk about things. We love to speculate on what can be and what could be. We'll see what happens with this, but I'm going to be over here producing my podcast content. I've got the show rebranded. I've got myself going in a great direction with Podcasting Strategy Simplified. I'm glad you're here for the ride, and plenty more good stuff to come, regardless of what technology is out there to push it forward. So with that, I want to thank you for taking the time to rap with me today on Podcasting Strategy Simplified. plenty more to come. Stay tuned. We may have another episode talking more about this, and I may even bring Rob or somebody else from the world that knows way more about this than me onto the show to talk about it with you. But for now, just focus on what you're doing and get damn good at producing content. With that, I'll wrap up. My name is Jason Sircone. This has been Podcasting Strategy Simplified. Until our paths cross again, stay explosive.